Bet two for good.
Yeah. Of course, 3 minutes to Wapner.
You'll make it.
Yeah.
Explore cinema's most fascinating minds with interviews, features and reviews of the world's greatest directors at bbc.co.uk/films.
For him, it was a new beginning.
Are we talking Lynley the Detective Inspector or Lynley the 8th Earl of Asherton?
For her, a last chance.
Who will I be working with?
Detective Inspector Lynley.
Lynley?
An unlikely team.
With a bit of luck, she'll lose her rag of punching.
With a mystery to solve.
What happened to Jacob?
She left.
Not long after you.
I'm told the two of you were pretty close. She was my cousin.
Was?
Can I expect any more skeletons to come out of the cupboard?
Do you enjoy making me look stupid?
I'm not surprised you're clutching at straws. All those people just willing little old Fauntleroy to cock it all up.
The Inspector Lynley Mysteries. A new crime double begins tomorrow at 8:30 on BBC One.
You're on your own now. You're free. No divorce, no alimony, no kids. You could be onto something great here.
I am the bear. I'm Dexter. Hello, kids. It's just a bloke they hired in to stand behind me. Just an out-of-work actor.
You've upset my daughter now, mate. You happy?
Danny, what have you done to your face?
Is it a humour? Is it a drama? It's a humour drama. Come on, Charlie, stop mucking about. Happiness starts Tuesday, the 20th of March on BBC Two.
Just before we join BBC News 24 here on BBC One, a late look at the weather with Helen Young.
Hello, welcome to Weather View. Well, most of us had some wet weather to contend with during Sunday in the United Kingdom, and it was all down to an area of low pressure. There's further areas of low pressure out in the Atlantic, and most of those start life across in North America. And here we've got one brewing up just at the moment. It's going to head its way up towards the lake regions for Monday, bringing snow across the lake areas, and down to the south here, some very humid air is going to come up from the southern states, bringing with it some thunderstorms. But that should all clear away as we head through into Tuesday. So there will be changing fortunes then across the United States. At the moment we've got these cold northwesterly winds. They'll be replaced by those humid southerly winds on the eastern seaboard, and then a change to cooler conditions again eventually as we head through to the end of the week. So let's start by taking a look in the northeast of America then. Quite a contrast, as you can see, the snow across the lake regions, temperature in Chicago around 6 degrees, but as you head down towards Charleston, a very humid 17 there with the risk of some thunder. And then ahead of all of that, New York in glorious sunshine and temperatures around 7 degrees. Out towards the west, well, here there's going to be more snow coming in across the higher ground. Seattle seeing temperatures around 9 degrees, though, rain falling here. And further south for San Francisco and Los Angeles, a good deal of dry and sunny weather. Now, as we head back across into Europe then, there's been a lot of cloud around during the day on Sunday. As we head down to the Alpine resorts, well, here there was a lot of cloud shrouding the mountains, although it does look as though the mountain tops were peeking out the top of it. Now, I think the next couple of days we won't be quite so lucky. It will be very cloudy with rain at lower levels and snow just on the very top tips of the mountains, so not quite such good news for skiers. Now, further east of that, it's only been very mild. Zagreb got up to 20 degrees, 9 degrees above the average temperature, and Bucharest was on 21. Now, it's going to stay warm for a couple of days yet, but then we will find the cooler air coming in from the west. But again, it's all changed because we find the milder air coming back in towards the end of the week. And again, it's all due to a change in wind direction. It's all due to the fact that areas of low pressure are going to continue heading their way eastwards across Europe during the coming few days. That means it will be rather wet at times as well, with that rain, as we saw, turning up across the Alpine regions and really just sitting there for a day or so. Well, back towards home on Sunday it was very cloudy, but Stornoway managed over 7 hours of sunshine. But in this thick cloud across in Northern Ireland, we saw 18 millimetres falling in 24 hours. That rain is now moving its way away northeastwards, and by the end of the night it should be drier and clearer for many of us, although across the north of Scotland here we will have some snow over the higher ground. So temperatures tonight then lower than last night, down to 1 to 2, -2 even in Northern Ireland. For Monday morning it should start off dry but quite chilly on the eastern side, but during the day the showers in the west will come further eastwards. Some of those will be heavy and thundery, and then north will keep the cloud and the rain, so a cool day generally. Bye-bye.
Our face is nature's name tag.
Imagine, however, not being able to recognize one of your own children.
He could look at your left eye, then he could look at your nose. His problem is he can't put it all together into one picture.
John Cleese discovers the many secrets of the human face, Wednesday at 9:10 on BBC One.
The latest nominations for eviction from the celebrity Big Brother household, Jack D and Vanessa Feltz. To vote for Jack, call 0901 1155 004. To vote for Vanessa, call 0901 1155 006. Choose the loser and make Comic Relief a winner.
Blew close to 10 million.
The gambler's world was bunny girls and crime.
Involved in 20 murders.
Now it's mainstream.
Las Vegas is #1 among tourists.
High rollers.
$200 million in jackpots.
And losers.
£100,000 went to the bookies.
Harmless fun or dangerous games.
We're creating a nation of gamblers.
Touching millions, generating billions.
Addiction of the 21st century.
High Stakes starts Tuesday the 20th of March on BBC One. Through the night now on BBC One, we join BBC News 24.
This is BBC News, a reminder of the headlines. Mexico's Zapatista rebel leaders have been given a hero's welcome in Mexico City. In France's local elections, the left-winger Bertrand Delanoux is well ahead in the race for mayor of Paris. And still to come, Congo's new wheeler dealers. Young entrepreneurs in the war-ravaged country build up an industry in wooden scooters. In the Far East, investors are bracing themselves for another week of turmoil on the stock market. On Friday, Wall Street was rocked when the Nasdaq index of high-tech shares closed at its lowest level since 1998 and nearly 60% down on the all-time high it peaked at exactly 12 months earlier. And there was worse news in Japan, where the Tokyo stock market closed at its lowest level in more than 15 years. The Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihiro Mori has announced that he intends to resign. But far from calming fears of a recession, the news has brought speculation that the country is heading for a period of deeper crisis unless Mori is replaced quickly and new policies are put in place. Well, I'm now joined live from the Tokyo Stock Exchange by our correspondent there, Clive Myrie. Clive, the government, I understand, has just released some figures showing the latest state of the Japanese economy. What is the picture?
Well, it's better than expected, Clarence. A lot of people expected a percentage rise of 0.6% for the last quarter GDP figures for Japan. A little bit higher than that, 0.8%. So the country is not officially in recession, but this economic picture is still not very good. And many analysts are expecting the situation to get even worse for the next quarter of this year because of the onrush of the effects of the downturn in the US economy. So the overall picture not very good, but these specific figures showing a little bit of an increase and a little bit of an improvement in the Japanese economy.
Even so, that's presumably not enough to stop shares opening lower than would have been expected.
Well, that's right. You joined me at the stock exchange here. The numbers have been going south pretty much all morning. The stock prices have been falling here, and they have, as you say, been hitting 15-year lows daily for the last few months. The overall economic picture is not good at all, and I think part of the problem here is that there is also a political crisis taking place here. As you say, Yoshihiro Mori, the Prime Minister, has indicated that he is going to step down, and there are no real candidates who are willing to step up to the plate, as it were, and take this country by the scruff of the neck and deal with the economic problems that have been endemic here for the last decade.
Well, indeed, that political vacuum, if that is not resolved soon, what is likely to be the effect? This recession, the fears of recession, surely will harden into a reality.
Absolutely. Japan has managed to stave off recession so far, but as I say, the overall figures aren't good. The problem is that there is an overall lack of confidence in the economy here and in the leadership of the country to actually sort out this crisis. Japan has been bumping along towards recession, dipped into recession a few years ago, and has managed to creep out of that over the last couple of years. But it's been bumping along the bottom, really, for a decade. And the radical restructuring that is desperately needed here to deal with the banking sector and some of the major institutions, there seems to be a lack of political will to deal with that. And many analysts are saying that while the figures this morning are encouraging, they're really just a blip. And the fact is the economy will continue to go down in a downward spiral.
Clive Myrie at the Tokyo Stock Exchange. For now, many thanks. The reformist Iranian President Mohammad Khatami has defended his reforms in a rare address to Parliament. He said Iran had no choice but to ensure the future of democratic government. He didn't say whether he intends to stand again in elections scheduled for early June.
Never before had an Iranian president taken the unusual step of reporting back to the nation through its elected representatives. 4 years on from his dramatic landslide victory, it was a somber Mohammad Khatami who stood before Parliament. His hopes for reform have been heavily obstructed by hardliners who still hold a lot of real power. Mr. Khatami left open the key question of whether he'll stand again in June. He said only that he would continue to serve the people as long as he could take a step forward with their support. There's no doubt that President Khatami is still very popular. He would win the election easily if he does run. Wherever he goes in the country, thousands of admirers turn out to see the man on whom they pinned their hopes for change. But after 4 years of disappointment, many people who voted for change are feeling frustrated, though few blame Mr. Khatami himself.
His hands are tied, otherwise he could do a lot. At least he showed the people that he wants to do things, but he can't. The freedom he provided was great.
If he could run the country on his own, I would be happy. The problem is that he's not in charge. He may be president, but he has no power. Other people hold the power, and they haven't let him work.
Many of his promises were not fulfilled, especially this last year when there's been a lot of obstruction. Khatami's patience was good to begin with, but it's too much now. People can't take it anymore. Every day we have more bad news.
Not everybody's so sympathetic. Friday prayers in Tehran is a traditional gathering point for hardliners.
We aren't opposed to the President Khatami, but I think it's not good for the president again.
Many ordinary Iranians may be more concerned about economics than they are about politics, but these are tense times here in Iran. The reformists may have done well at the polls, but they've lost out heavily to a hardline counter-offensive. They're determined to make of this upcoming presidential election a turning point in their affairs, but that won't be easy to achieve. Jim Muir, BBC News, Tehran.
The Ugandan president has held his final campaign rally in Kampala ahead of presidential elections, which will be held on Monday. President Museveni, who has ruled Uganda since 1986, is hoping to win a further 5 years in office. For the first time since coming to power, he's facing a challenge, though, from a former friend, a retired colonel and medical doctor, Kizza Besigye.
The countdown to polling. Incumbent President Yoweri Museveni told supporters at his final rally in Kampala that he was the right man to lead them for 5 more years. His supporters agreed. Many of these still revere him for having led Uganda out of a period of brutal dictatorships. They also like his promises of modernization and better education. In his 15 years of leadership so far, President Museveni has become an important regional player, as well as earning praise from the West for his economic reforms. But the election contest has forced him to answer some delicate questions at home. Why has he called on the army to help with election security when many Ugandans have bitter memories of army killings from the dictatorship days?
But also now the army has come in, of course, because the police is also not adequate. Remember, this police of ours is only 16,000, 15,000 policemen. And we have got 17,000 polling stations.
Many of the questions have come from this man, retired Colonel Kizza Besigye. He's emerged as a credible challenger to President Museveni. Ugandans are intrigued because Mr. Besigye used to be good friends with the president. Although he hasn't caught up with President Museveni in the opinion polls, Mr. Besigye's campaign battles means there'll be much excitement as voters go to the polls. Kathy Jenkins, BBC News, Kampala.
The war in the Democratic Republic of Congo has for a long time challenged all means of economic survival. As people struggle amid the scarcity of materials necessary for business, some enterprising young entrepreneurs have resorted to building scooters out of wood.
Meet the original mountain bike. Strong, durable and wooden. It may not be the smoothest ride in the world or the safest, but when it comes to rush hour in Goma, the wooden bike is king. This is a rebel-held town caught up in a long war. Money is scarce, so are luxuries like pedals and spokes. 15-year-old Jean Bosco says it took him 3 days to turn a tree into a bike. Well, more of a scooter, really.
As you can see, there's pretty well no metal on this entire scooter. There are a couple of broken springs back here, but the suspension is rubber. Everything else is wood, and there's a little bit of rubber here on the wheels. So no punctures there, just solid rubber and grease.
But these scooters are built for work, not fun. Children push loads of up to 400 kilograms. A 10-kilometre journey will earn them maybe 50 cents.
Here's somebody loading up with some what looks like flour.
Ibrahim Liao should be in school. Instead, he scoots for a living. He had to rush off. He said he's got 12 kilometres to go this morning. Today, only 1 in 5 children in this part of eastern Congo gets any education at all. The war has forced many of them to flee their homes. And so they build their wooden scooters and head to work. A hard life in a hilly region. Andrew Harding, BBC News in eastern Congo.
Wouldn't have thought it could have worked. Now, a reminder of the main news again this hour. Well over 100,000 supporters have turned out to witness Mexico's Zapatista guerrilla movement become the first rebel group to march into the capital's main plaza since 1914. And exit polls in the French local elections suggest there's been a strong swing to the left in the capital, Paris. I'm Clarence Mitchell, and this is BBC News.
Good morning. The week ahead looks, in a word, unsettled. There will be more rain.
There'll even be some snow over Highland Scotland in particular. In fact, that's happening now. So you could say a touch of returning winter, but it won't be widespread, not necessarily long-lasting. In fact, it'll be fairly mild in the south. So the picture then, if you drew it up on the lines, looks like this. A low pressure area growing across in the next 24 hours. That's going to bring some significant rain, I suspect. And then this cold plunge, which, although it's snowing in Scotland, hasn't actually reached Scotland yet. So colder air is still to come by the middle of the week. The winds, in fact, come in from the west for the first day or so, and then they swing round to give us all slightly chillier weather. Then there's that brief cold blast in the middle of the week. So that will introduce nighttime frosts. We'll have one now, of course, but they'll tend to sink southwards and even bloom in central England for a day or so in the middle of the week. But on the whole, it's going to be more of a north-south thing. In fact, it's that already. In the last 24 hours, we have had rain sweeping across the whole of the UK, but it's concentrated most recently and stayed in Scotland. And the backwash cold air means actually it's snow falling in Highland Scotland now. It's dry virtually everywhere else, and it'll stay that way until around about dawn. As a result, temperatures drop away, there will be some ice around, and a little bit of fog picked up. Not widespread for most, but for Northern Ireland it might be a slightly different story. But for all of us, I think it'll feel a colder night, and of course, where it's snowing in Scotland, that'll be fairly obvious. So first of all then, fog and ice. Northern Ireland. The roads are likely to be icy where they haven't been gritted, of course, and fog patches will develop, so driving conditions in the morning for the rush hour won't be at their best, but for Scotland it could be worse. I think luckily most of the snow is going to be in Highland Scotland. There's rain through the central belt, but now that clears away and temperatures drop, we could see ice forming here. That might be something of a problem in the morning. So here's the picture then, by the time we greet dawn. Bit of a ridge of high pressure, so it ought to promise nice weather, even though it'll be cold, but it doesn't last long. Fairly quickly the showers bunch up and come along and cross eastwards, and I think they'll be quite widespread through much of the day. So there you are then, a fairly nice start with sunshine in the east, fairly quickly eroded as the clouds build up and the showers push in from the west. Yes, thunder's a possibility, and hail's quite likely. Certainly there'll be big downpours. If you want to find a section of the British Isles that looks like to stay dry for the next 12 hours, I would say southern uplands of Scotland, far north of England. But I'm probably sticking my neck out for that one. By the afternoon then, widespread showers for England and Wales, rather more cloud and the onset of evening rain for Northern Ireland, and the snow drifts northward through Highland Scotland, leaving drier weather behind. If the racing goes ahead at Stratford and at Plumpton, it's unlikely to be guaranteed fine weather. There will be showers, but nor will it be that cold. In fact, nowhere will it be that cold, with the possible exception of Highland Scotland. 9s, 10s and 11s are about 2 off what we had yesterday, Sunday. Now we'll just walk ahead a little bit to Tuesday, and it looks as though we'll have the north-south thing developing here, with mild but wet weather through Wales, central and southern England, brighter, drier but rather chilly weather through Scotland, maybe Northern Ireland and the far north of England. And in fact we're not alone in this sort of change of the weather, in that there's a lot of rain still over the central plain of Europe, which you know has been causing floods recently, and to find reliable sunshine you still, as always, have to head south.
Breaking the news. There was other damage caused by the blast.
It is right that we have a budget that puts families first.
I am grateful to Sir Anthony for clearing my name.
A chance to have a close look at the Bluebird.
24 hours a day, BBC News 24.
You get racism crossing the street. It's in the very fabric of American society.
How many lessons did you learn?
No gossip, no small talk, just hard talk with Tim Sebastian, celebrating 1,000 episodes, weeknights at 10:30 on BBC News 24.
Hello, good morning. This is BBC News 24. I'm Clarence Mitchell. It's almost exactly 1:30. In fact, it is exactly 1:30. The headlines. The government accused of incompetence after a record rise in foot and mouth cases. Police find the body of missing 4-year-old Luke Gargan. 2 leading Chechen rebels are arrested over the kidnap and murder of 3 Britons and a New Zealander. And Spurs head for an FA Cup semi-final with Arsenal. Good morning. 25 new cases of foot and mouth disease have been confirmed. That's the highest daily total since the crisis started 2.5 weeks ago. The Agriculture Minister, Nick Brown, insists, though, that it is under control. The Tories, however, claim we're close to a national emergency, while Ireland's Natural Resources Minister called it a scandal, saying Britain has totally mishandled the crisis.
Yet another new part of the countryside hit by foot and mouth disease. 70 cattle at this farm on the North Kent marshes have been slaughtered. The virus may have spread here through the air across the Thames estuary from Essex. Neighbouring farmers are terrified their livestock may be infected next.
It's just emotionally devastating. You can't begin to imagine. This is a beef herd that my husband's built up for years. I mean, he's a brilliant stockman, respected all over the county, and here we are 2 miles from foot and mouth.
As the burning continues here at the first farm in Somerset to fall victim to the disease, the Ministry of Agriculture insists that the outbreak is under control, though it's not making predictions about when it will end.
What I am very aware of is that in the 1967 outbreak, we thought it had finished, and it hadn't. It all broke out again, and so it may be that we're dealing with a disease outbreak that will have a long tail before we can get completely back to normal. I am absolutely determined to do everything necessary to extinguish the disease.
But as Irish police continue the efforts to prevent the spread of the disease to the Republic, a government minister in Dublin has described Britain's handling of the crisis as scandalous, saying ministers seem to think that the disease was just going to go away. Here, opposition MPs have challenged the claim that the disease is under control.
It now seems to be airborne and is jumping from farm to farm, apparently through the air. We may also have some evidence that it's been transported on vehicle wheels, possibly even milk tankers, which would be a horrifying prospect.
It's not just farming which is being devastated by this crisis. With the countryside out of bounds for visitors, top tourist destinations like the Lake District are suffering a huge loss of income. The industry as a whole stands to lose £100 million a week.
We have got evidence that this crisis is damaging Britain's reputation overseas. Our call centres in many markets are being inundated with inquiries wanting to know about whether it's still safe to travel to Britain and what alterations they should make to their travel plans.
Gloucestershire is the second county to be hit for the first time in today's new outbreaks. It's on a farm in the Forest of Dean, where there's particular concern for the sheep which roam wild in the woods.
Police searching for a 4-year-old boy in Strathclyde have found his body. Luke Gargan was reported missing by his mother early on Saturday morning. A 35-year-old man has been arrested and is due to appear in court later today. Our Scotland correspondent Carol Jones now reports.
All day, people have been arriving at the Gargan family home in Saltcoats, bringing soft toys and flowers in the memory of 4-year-old Luke, who went missing early yesterday morning. His mother saw him last just before 5 o'clock, but less than 3 hours later, his bed was empty. Police launched a major search and used a helicopter with thermal imaging cameras to try and locate the youngster. In the early hours of this morning, about 15 miles inland from the seaside town of Saltcoats, police teams discovered a child's body on farmland bordering this loch. Forensic teams have been gathering what evidence they can, but the operation's been difficult as the area has been sealed off due to the foot and mouth crisis. The discovery has devastated people who knew the family. Mary McCafferty lives across the road and Luke was often in her home. Comforted by her son, she says it's a tragic end to a promising life.
A wee boy would have made something out of his life. He definitely would have, because he was clever, he was intelligent. He was so well looked after in every way that I think this is a terrible tragedy for his wee life to be cut short like this.
A formal identification has taken place and police have confirmed that the body found on farmland is that of 4-year-old Luke Gargan. Neighbours in this close-knit community have described Luke as a charming little boy who is popular, polite and well-mannered. They're devastated and are struggling to come to terms with their loss. A 35-year-old man is due to appear in court tomorrow in connection with Luke's death. Carol Jones, BBC News, Saltcoats.
2 leading Chechen rebels have been arrested in connection with the murder of 3 British engineers and a New Zealander in 1998. Their headless bodies were found in a village on the outskirts of Grozny. Police said they were killed after a rescue attempt went wrong.
It was along this stretch of road, outside the Chechen capital Grozny, where the severed heads of the 3 Britons and the New Zealander were found in December 1998. Peter Kennedy from Hereford, Darren Hickey from Surrey, Rudolf Petschy from Devon, and New Zealander Stan Shaw were setting up a telecom network in Chechnya at the height of the civil war when they were abducted. They'd been involved in a gun battle which their 10 bodyguards lost to the kidnappers. A ransom demand to free the men, shown here on a video released by the kidnappers, went unanswered, and the 4 were killed after a rescue attempt went wrong. The 2 Chechen rebel leaders thought to have been involved in a murder were arrested by Russian special forces in neighbouring Azerbaijan and handed over to the Russian authorities, according to the Minister of Internal Affairs in Azerbaijan. Ruslan Akhmedov, who's a well-known leader of a Chechen faction, was on Interpol's wanted list. He's suspected of being involved in more than 30 kidnappings. The other man, Badrudin Matazayev, is a top aide to a Chechen warlord.
Они находятся на территории России.
They were arrested thanks to the concerted efforts by the law enforcement bodies of Russia and Azerbaijan and were extradited to the Russian territory, and that's where they are now. Police investigators have started to interrogate them.
The Foreign Office has said it's still checking the reports. The spokesman said they were in touch with the families of the dead men. Alistair Leithhead, BBC News.
The Conservatives have demanded an inquiry into allegations that the Foreign Secretary Robin Cook made use of a leaked report into the Sierra Leone affair and misled Parliament. The claims emerged following the publication of an account by the BBC's political correspondent Nick Jones.
It was the aftermath of the British arms shipment to Sierra Leone in defiance of the United Nations and the fear he might be criticised by a House of Commons committee which so concerned the Foreign Secretary. On the morning their report was published, Robin Cook phoned the BBC almost 2 hours before it was to be released publicly. He wanted to emphasise references favourable to himself. He ended by saying this conversation never took place. It later emerged he'd received a leaked copy, but he told MPs he hadn't briefed the media before publication. The Conservatives want the Prime Minister to hold an inquiry.
I hope he's going to have a real serious investigation into this. And if it concludes that Robin Cook did lie about this subsequently, then I hope there will be no question whatsoever of this being terminal for Robin Cook, of him resigning.
In a statement released this afternoon, the Foreign Office says there was no breach of the ministerial code. There was no impropriety. The controversy over the investigation into the Sierra Leone arms shipment resulted in ministers and civil servants being told they must immediately return leaked copies of parliamentary reports. The question of whether this inquiry should be reopened is a matter for the House of Commons watchdog, the Parliamentary Standards Committee. Nicholas Jones, BBC News at the Foreign Office.
Exit polls from the voting in the French local elections suggest there's been a strong swing to the left in Paris. If the socialists are successful, it'll be the first time in more than a century that they've held power in the French capital. But across France, a very different picture appears to be emerging. Analysts had anticipated sweeping gains for the socialists, but pollsters now put the left and right neck and neck.
The smiling President Chirac cast his vote in the small village where his wife was standing as councillor. The French leader is hoping for a good result in these elections as a springboard for next year's presidential race, in which he's expected to fight against the socialist Prime Minister Lionel Jospin. As voters went to the polls, many were asking which major cities would the left capture from the right, with much speculation surrounding the Gaullist bastion of Paris. There, the socialist candidate Bertrand Delanoë appears to have gained around a third of the vote. Not enough for a first-round victory, but it still gives him a considerable lead over the right-wing's official candidate, Philippe Séguin. Mr. Delanoë, a previously unknown politician, now has a good chance of becoming the first socialist mayor of the French capital in over a century. The right's campaign in Paris has been hampered by corruption allegations against the current Gaullist mayor Jean Tibéry. Despite being dumped by his party, he chose to run as an independent candidate and appears to have gained enough votes to stay in the race for a second round. Across France, the left has improved on its showing at the previous local elections 6 years ago, but the right has held its own. It appears there hasn't been the much-predicted nationwide pink wave in favour of the socialists. James Kamarasamy, BBC News, Paris.
The governor of Feltham Young Offenders Institution in West London, where an Asian inmate was murdered in a racist attack a year ago, says it could happen again. Nick Pascoe says officers are sometimes unaware of the backgrounds and crimes of offenders when they arrive.
Welcome back.
Another intake arrives at Feltham Young Offenders Institution. 30,000 boys and young men passed through here last year. Their spirits may seem high now, but the reality is that inmates often become depressed, are bullied, and last year one was murdered. A racist psychopath, Robert Stewart, killed his Asian cellmate. Feltham now admits that because of his violent background, Stewart should not have shared a cell. But 12 months on, the BBC Panorama programme has discovered that it could happen again because inadequate information is provided about new arrivals and documents often don't even list what crime they've committed.
There is always a risk in that something like that will happen again. The tragedy which took place, there is always a possibility that might happen again. I cannot say it will never happen again.
Inmates are often still locked up for 23 hours a day because of overcrowding and pressures on staff. While the BBC was at Feltham, one inmate tried to commit suicide. Self-inflicted injuries are a regular occurrence.
There were phases, certainly, when I worked in Feltham where we would have 10 or 15 episodes in a day.
Feltham is trying to make improvements, but the prison service accepts that it has to make better use of information available on young offenders to avoid further tragedies. Christine Stewart, BBC News.
The government will announce later this morning how it's to spend the extra £200 million on teacher recruitment promised in the budget last week. Secondary schools in London, the South East and the Midlands are short of 1,500 teachers. At the same time, members of some teaching unions are to begin industrial action today to stop covering for vacancies and absences of more than 3 days, affecting up to 1,000 schools. A report out today from a committee of MPs is expected to be highly critical of the way the licence to run the National Lottery was awarded last year. The Select Committee's report will examine just what went wrong, and it's likely to recommend nationalising the lottery rather than licensing a private sector company to run it, as at present. Women's wear could be going out of fashion, that's according to a new report. Spending on women's clothes has dropped to its lowest level for 10 years. The research claims that although stores are offering lower prices to entice shoppers, women are more interested in value for money. And it also suggests that female shoppers are spending their money elsewhere on DIY and holidays. This is BBC News 24, still to come, travelling back to aviation's golden age. Pilots from around the world take to the skies for an epic month-long journey to Australia.
Our face is nature's nameless hat.
Imagine, however, not
Being able to recognize one of your own children.
He could look at your left eye, then he could look at your nose. His problem is he can't put it all together into one picture.
John Cleese discovers the many secrets of the human face, Wednesday at 9:10 on BBC One.
It's just coming up to 1:45, the headlines. The Agriculture Minister says he believes the foot and mouth outbreak is under control, but the number of cases continues to rise dramatically. Police have found the body of missing 4-year-old Luke Gargan, and 2 leading Chechen rebels have been arrested over the kidnap and murder of 3 Britons and a New Zealander in 1998. More on those stories soon, but first a roundup of the day's sports headlines with Dominic Cotton.
Hello again. Spurs will play their North London rivals Arsenal for a place in the FA Cup final. They beat West Ham 3-2 at Upton Park in their quarter-final. Sergei Rebrov scoring twice for George Graham's side. Liverpool secured their place in the last 4 with a 4-2 win against Tranmere Rovers, standing between them and the final second division giant killers Wycombe Wanderers. Now, there's been cup action in Scotland as well. Celtic, still in with a chance of winning a domestic treble, beat Hearts 1-0 in their quarter-final. Henrik Larsson won the game with his 43rd goal of the season.
The last time Hearts came to Parkhead, they were on the wrong end of a 6-1 drubbing, and only some determined last-ditch defending prevented Celtic from running up a similar tally before half-time. Stilian Petrov's header was cleared off the line by Lee Makel. Henrik Larsson, who scored a hat-trick the last time they met, was denied by Antiniemi, and Stephen Presley's precision tackle prevented Lubo Moravcik from picking up the crumbs. Niemi came to the rescue of his side yet again, spreading his body while Larsson attempted to slot the ball home. But as any observer of the Scottish game knows, you can only deny Henrik Larsson for so long. On this occasion it took 41 minutes before he planted Alan Thompson's cross in the back of the Hearts net. Hearts played the second period with far more self-belief than they had the first, but there was little in the way of goalmouth action. Alan Thompson found the target for Celtic, but the effort was tame. Stephen Presley headed wide for Hearts, and only in the dying seconds did Hearts look as if they might force the replay, but substitute Gary McSwegan was denied by the slippery surface and the on-rushing Rab Douglas. Celtic then edged nervily into the semi-final, but the dream of the treble remains alive. Keith York, BBC News.
And they'll play Dundee United in the semi-finals. United beat holders Rangers 1-0. David Hanna with the goal. The other semi will be contested by Hibernian and Livingston. Now to news of British success at the World Indoor Athletics Championships in Lisbon. Daniel Kane secured the team's only gold medal, winning the 400 metres. Mark Lewis Francis won bronze in the 60 metres, but there was disappointment for John Mayock and Ireland's Sonia O'Sullivan.
As the sun set on the World Indoor Championships in Lisbon, the British contingent can look back on a day of highs and lows. Daniel Kane's put his Sydney heartbreak behind him by winning the 400 metres title in emphatic style. The 21-year-old took a chance and led from the gun, but the gamble paid off. Kane's had just enough left in the tank to hold off the American Milton Campbell to take the gold medal. Teammate Mark Hilton was fifth. The final of the 60 metres got underway at the 7th attempt, and after a nervous start, Mark Lewis Francis showed exactly why he's been labelled the next big thing. The 18-year-old showed tremendous power over the closing stages to take the bronze medal in a junior world record. Americans Tim Harden and Tim Montgomery took the gold and silver respectively. But there was disappointment for John Mayock in the 3,000 metres. His training partner Hisham El Garouj had the race under control from the start, the Moroccan cruising to his third world indoor title. Mayock just missed out on a medal in fourth. Finally, things went from bad to worse for Ireland's Sonia O'Sullivan. After finishing 7th in yesterday's 3,000 metres, she trailed home last in her favoured race, the 1,500. The title was won by Morocco's Hasna Benhassi. Carrie Davis, BBC News.
Now to Rugby League, and both Bradford and Warrington are through to the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup. The Wolves beat French champions Villeneuve 32-0, while the Bulls thrashed Wakefield 38-0.
Bradford followed up their 46-0 win of Wakefield in last season's Challenge Cup final with another rout. James Lowes twisted and turned his way over the line for the first score of the afternoon, and the Bulls were up and running. After 15 minutes, they doubled their lead with Henry Paul in at the start and the end of the move, which saw the visitors go 10-0 up. Michael Withers squeezed through the tightest of gaps to run in the third try, but the Wakefield defence won't be happy to have conceded such a soft scoring opportunity. The Wildcats' best chance came just before the break, when a kick from deep in their own half took them to within 10 yards of the Bradford line. From the restart, Tutupu looked to have broken Wakefield's duck, but he was denied by Withers' try-saving intervention. Withers scored the first of Bradford's 4 second-half tries, but the pick of them was the solo effort from Lee Gilmore. Lowes again and Gardner also went over as the holders eased into their third successive semi-final. Robin Marks, BBC News.
And Bradford have been drawn against Warrington in the semi-finals. The other game will be between St Helens and Leeds. And that's all the sport for now.
Dominic, thank you very much indeed. Abroad, and there's been independent confirmation from Afghanistan that the ancient Buddhist statues carved into rock at Bamiyan have now been completely destroyed. They were blown up with dynamite despite international protests. The UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan, who's visiting Pakistan, had called the statues part of the common heritage of mankind.
In destroying the Bamiyan statues, the Taliban leadership ignored an international outcry. In their ultra-strict interpretation of Islamic doctrine, the statues were an inducement to idolatry and therefore unacceptable. Kofi Annan arrived in the region already too late to prevent the dynamiting of the rock Buddhas. But he shook hands anyway with the Taliban Foreign Minister, Wakil Ahmed Mutawakkil, whose colleagues had rejected not only Mr. Annan's personal appeal, but those of the Organisation of Islamic Conference and the world's most senior scholars of Sunni Islam to stop the destruction.
Yes, I did discuss the statues with the Foreign Minister, and I walked away from the meeting not very encouraged. Basically, he confirmed that all movable statues have been destroyed, and that the destruction of the 2 statues had begun, but he could not tell me the status of the demolition. I had hoped for a much better news, and we then went on, and I must say, I find if they do carry through this lamentable decision, I think they'll be doing themselves a great deal of disservice, and they'll be doing a great deal of disservice to Islam, in whose name they claim to be doing this.
The Taliban are still largely unrecognized by the international community as a legitimate government. This move, widely denounced as cultural vandalism on a massive scale, won't win them any new friends. Fergus Nicol, BBC News.
In Mexico, more than 100,000 supporters have turned out to witness the Zapatista guerrilla movement become the first openly rebel group to march into the capital's main plaza since 1914. The rebels led a procession of their supporters through the streets of Mexico City in the climax to a fortnight-long nationwide march. Along the way, they've been gathering support for their demands for greater rights for indigenous people. Israel has tightened its 5-month blockade on the Palestinian territories, virtually sealing off the West Bank town of Ramallah. Israeli authorities say they are responding to repeated attacks emanating from the town. But Palestinians have accused Israel of turning their areas into prison camps. Pope John Paul II has beatified 233 Roman Catholics who were killed during the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. Beatification is the penultimate step before sainthood in the Roman Catholic Church. Thousands of Spanish pilgrims were in Rome to witness the ceremony.
In a ceremony in front of a packed St. Peter's Square, Pope John Paul recognised as potential future saints more than 200 Roman Catholic victims of the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. It's the highest number he's ever beatified at one time. The crowds had come to honour the new blesseds, as they're known, mostly priests, monks and nuns who were killed in an anti-clerical campaign by left-wingers at the start of the Civil War. Their beatification is the last step before possible sainthood or canonisation. Historians have recorded that 12 Spanish bishops, 283 nuns, 2,000 monks and more than 4,000 priests were killed. The Civil War broke out when General Franco led a revolt against Spain's leftist democratic government. Franco won the war, which claimed about 500,000 lives, and went on to rule Spain with an iron hand for 36 years until his death. John Paul, reading his homily in Spanish, invoked the names of the newly beatified in a plea for an end to terrorism, blamed on Basque separatists in Spain. Terrorism is born of hatred and in turn feeds it, John Paul said. No motive, no cause or ideology can justify it. His comments brought strong applause. John Paul has beatified or canonised over 1,000 people since he became pontiff in 1978. More people than all the previous popes combined. The Pope called the latest group to be beatified a model of coherence of life, constancy in faith and reconciliatory spirit. David Campanale, BBC News.
One of the world's toughest air races is underway. Pilots from around the globe took to the skies from Biggin Hill Airfield in Kent in a daring bid to recapture one of the golden moments of early 20th century aviation. The aircraft will be stopping at 30 ports of call during their flight to Australia. Their route will take them through Europe and on into Egypt before they head on through Asia. They'll be trying to recreate the so-called kangaroo route covered by the original adventurers. They're aiming to land in Sydney in around a month's time.
Despite the dismal weather, pilots from all over the world gathered at Biggin Hill early this morning, keen to start their epic journey, rekindling the pioneering spirit of early 20th century adventures. Over the next 28 days, these light aircraft will have to fly a 14,000-mile kangaroo route to Sydney in Australia, visiting 30 ports of call to refuel or stop over.
There are two sides to the air race. One is speed and the other is precision, and we actually have entered the precision event, so it's our skill at flying rather than going fast that's important, and yeah, we got the skill.
This whole event is massive, we're told, in Australia, and we're probably going to be big celebrities when we get there. Yeah. If we get there, that is. If we get there.
It was the Australian High Commissioner who waved them off for the ultimate flying challenge. The fourth time this run has been recreated since its start in 1919, when the Australian government offered a prize of £10,000 to the first crew to attempt the mammoth flight from the UK to Sydney.
Among the 40 planes taking off here from Biggin Hill, there is just one helicopter, piloted by 60-year-old Jennifer Murray, who last year flew around the world. But she says this kangaroo trip to Australia is going to be the adventure of a lifetime. Emma Howard, BBC News at Biggin Hill.
Time now for a quieter version of the weather with Rob McElwee. Rob.
Good morning. I thought I'll walk you through the next 2, 3 or 4 days to show you how much fun we're going to have trying to forecast this weather in any detail. A couple of things ashore. Pressure will be low all the time and there are fronts around, so rain is definitely on the cards. You can't tell very much else from the pressure patterns, but you can if you want to run the forecast winds. The computer model has them coming in from the west to the southwest for a while, and then there's a bit of a cold plunge starting in Scotland. That then dies back again. Then there's another cold plunge, a really cold one this time, but it only gets as far south as Scotland. So temperatures, generally speaking, will be reasonably on the mild side for England and Wales and Northern Ireland. Nighttime frosts start in Scotland. Briefly they appear midweek in England, but they're going to be a rarity otherwise. So an unsettled week ahead, which of course has already started. The rain has gone now from England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but it hasn't gone from Scotland, and increasingly, particularly for Highland Scotland, it is turning to snow. That'll be a slow thing to stop. It's drifting slowly northwards and it ought to be gone, I think, by the next 12 hours. So a frost then develops tonight in Northern Ireland, and with that, ice on many of the minor roads. A little bit of frost elsewhere that shouldn't be too much of a problem. But it's particularly Northern Ireland I think a focus on for the morning rush hour. There will be icy stretches and there'll be some fog patches which are already developing, so driving conditions will not be that good. In Scotland, of course, they'll be affected by the overnight snow falling in the Highlands, and of course there's still plenty of rain coming down and lasting for even the major roads. So there's the picture then as we greet it by dawn. Snow still falling in Highland Scotland, dry everywhere else, but not for long. Even though pressure's high, everything's mobile, remember. We're moving from west to east, so we've got showers moving quite quickly from Wales through England and just touching Northern Ireland as the day goes through. It could well be that the far south of Scotland is the only place that remains reasonably dry throughout the day. So the picture then of the morning, then after the morning sunshine has been capped off by the invading cloud, there'll be showers, and some of them are quite big. Hail or thunder are certainly likely, heavy rain showers. Again, if you're driving in that, the conditions won't be that good. They drift eastwards, so by the end of the day, briefly it might get a little drier in Wales before then the cloud really thickens up, and probably late afternoon into the evening, Northern Ireland will see the sun disappear and the rain start to fall as proper rain rather than sunshine and then showers. If any racing does take place in this coming day, for example, Plumpton or Stratford-upon-Avon, the chances of getting a dry day are pretty negligible. So we'll go for showers, but with reasonable temperatures, around about 10 degrees. In fact, that will be a good reflection of everywhere in England. Drop down a couple for Northern Ireland and even back 1 or 2 for Wales. And for Scotland in the Highlands, 4 or 5 will be pushing it if there's snow on the ground in particular, but 7, 8 or 9 are quite likely for Glasgow and Edinburgh. On Tuesday then, the rain is most likely to be concentrated in the southern half of Britain, so we'll say central and southern England and Wales, with a rather dry picture by this time for Scotland, dry but fairly chilly at 7 degrees. If you moved further afield, you'd notice that we're not actually alone in this unusual weather. There's some fairly heavy rain through Central Europe. It's caused flooding, as you know, over the weekend in Hungary and Ukraine. The thaw has been pushing through into Scandinavia. That'll continue, but might get cut off a little bit by Tuesday. If you're a sun seeker, well, you can go south. In fact, Iberia gets better, but so indeed do all the central and eastern Mediterranean islands.
Zapatista rebel leaders are given a hero's welcome in Mexico City. The left-winger Bertrand Delano is well ahead in the race for mayor of Paris. The UN Secretary General criticizes Taliban for destroying Afghanistan's Buddhist statues. And Japan prepares for more turmoil on the stock market, despite government reports of some growth in the economy. Hello, this is BBC News. I'm Clarence Mitchell. Well over 100,000 supporters have turned out to witness Mexico's Zapatista guerrilla movement become the first rebel group to march into the capital's main plaza since 1914. The rebels led a procession of supporters through the streets of Mexico City in the climax to a 2-week nationwide march. Along the way, they've been gathering support for their demands for greater rights for Mexico's indigenous people.
It's become known as